So today we're going to give you an update on our simple pig pen. That's coming up next. Hello everyone, this is Dwayne with Edge of Nowhere Farm, and we're coming to you this morning on February 17th, 2018. It's a beautiful morning. It's probably 45, 50 degrees this morning. Just perfect day today. What we wanted to do, we wanted to bring you guys an update on our pig enclosure. So I've had a lot of folks watch that first video. In fact, I'll link that right here so you can see that video if you haven't yet, on how we build a simple pig pen. Just want to give you an update. Yesterday was a bittersweet day for us. We actually had sent our first 2 pigs to the butcher. We had a mobile butcher come out and actually do the process here. So I had the opportunity to be here with them to the very end. So bit of a bittersweet day yesterday, but we woke up this morning to some hog jowl bacon that we made and are looking forward to the final product. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to give you an update on how the enclosure did, because obviously, you know, we're just rookies. Those were our first 2 large livestock animals that we had ever actually worked with before. You know, Lori and I being city kids, basically, and out here doing this for the first time. So, you know, we kind of wanted to give you an update and kind of show you how it held up. So Lori's going to kind of follow me the best she can, and we're going to try to keep cords and stuff out of the way, but we kind of want to show you everything. So in the first video, you actually saw my son and I install the actual pin itself. The pin held up great. In fact, the only issue that we had was actually with the door that we created, which we didn't show you in that video. So the door that we created, it's up against the wall now. So the door we created, we cut out a 4-foot panel of the hog paneling, took some 2x4, we made a frame out of that, put a door latch on there, and then we installed it. We already knew right off the bat when we had these pigs that we were going to probably expand this. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But we wanted something that was fairly temporary, but would still serve as a door to let us in and keep them out. And you know what? It did fantastic until, Tuesday of this week. We were home and thought we heard somebody running around in the backyard. And sure enough, it was our 2 300-pound pigs running around in the back of the farm, just having a grand old time. So they figured out how to get that thing open. We put them back in, closed the door, and 5 minutes later they had completely destroyed that door. So once they had gotten out, they wanted nothing to do with this small space and were just running around having a blast. So anyhow, that's the reason why you don't see a door here, and we're going to do something a little bit different with pigs going forward as far as the door itself, which we didn't really use much. But overall, you can see it held up really well. I'll have Lori kind of follow me in. So we've got another video we did on our feeder, so we'll talk a little bit about the feeder first, but if Laura wants to follow me in, kind of get an idea of how kind of what they did. I mean, they're rooting animals, so they dug a lot, so you see some holes in here. Not a big deal. Again, the fencing and everything held up well. Our feeder, where feeder's right over here, the feeder actually did really well up until a few weeks ago. You know, once they were pushing that 300-pound mark, they were really flipping those doors up a lot. And it actually was doing fine. The only problem is the flaps that I created was a combination of I think it was a 2x6 and a 2x4. You can kind of see it there, and I had to piece them back together just because it was a little too wide, and they were stepping up onto that, and when they stepped up onto that, they finally broke through it. Otherwise, it actually held up really well. So we're going to do an update to that. We'll show you that probably a little bit later as far as what we're going to use for the flaps, but the actual feeder itself held up really good. Another thing that we didn't show you was this really weird rinky-dink redneck. I guess that might be the best way to put it. Hut that we built. Again, rookies here when it comes to building stuff, so we did the best we could. For whatever reason, I thought those pylons would be a great idea to lift it up higher. Absolutely unnecessary. But they did sleep in there, so they did have a nice place for them to go into at night, especially as we got into our colder nights. And then we had some tarps kind of strewn up for them during the day, so they had some extra shade. So, but actually held up pretty well. We're just going to lose the blocks on the bottom, those pylon blocks. So we may use one sunken in the ground just to kind of stabilize it a little bit better. But we'll use that so they have shelter to get out of the rain. So we are going to be getting a couple more pigs here in a few weeks. So we want to make sure that they've got that for the spring in particular. Summertime, we're going to have kind of some mesh. We'll show you that later. So that held up really well. Next thing, as long as Lori doesn't lose her footing in here, in the mess. Yeah, come on back. So back here in the corner, I don't think we actually showed you guys this. So this was our automatic pig waterer. So what we used, pretty basic. The only thing that we had a problem finding, which I'm still going to be looking for now, is one of those food grade 50-gallon barrels that has a removable lid. We can find them, but none of them have the removable lid, and I'm not mechanically inclined enough to work around that process. So what we did is we got one of those brute trash cans from Home Depot, installed that little nipple waterer down there, and it worked fantastic. We had no issues with it. Only thing that we had happen is the bulkhead is plastic, and that the plastic bulkhead that the nipple drinker screws into, that broke. But otherwise it held up really well. So we had that. They obviously spilled a lot of water in there and had a really good time digging in the mud. In fact, that was their mud pit, so they were in that basically every day. And then the only other thing, because they dug a lot in there, the T-post that's closest to it, the T, so the T at the bottom of the T-post, which was down underneath the ground, they actually broke that right off of the actual T, the post itself. So they broke that, and then they got over here on another one, did the same thing, and broke that T off. So we'll be replacing those T-posts today, and hopefully that'll fix it, because it'll be another 6 to 8 inches down, so it'll be away from where they're digging. So you can see they just kind of dug along here. This was where they went to the bathroom, spread their manure, which I got to take care of later. But one of the things about pig manure, it's a fantastic fertilizer, and we're going to be using that for our fruit trees. In fact, I'll link a video here so you guys can see what we're using to compost our pig manure. In fact, next weekend will be our first fertilizing day. Hopefully, if we can get everything else done, first fertilizing day for our fruit trees, which have already started breaking bud. So back to the pig enclosure. So one of the things that we learned very quickly with this design is we left these T-posts up above the 3-foot hog paneling. We won't do that again. The reason why, Laura and I both have scars to show, you will absolutely hit yourself on these. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back through, we're going to actually hammer these down so that they're the same height as the paneling, because we found that a lot of times we wouldn't use the door that you saw that was destroyed. We just climb over the 3-foot paneling. It was pretty easy to do to get into the enclosure to be with the pigs, which we did enjoy spending time with them. So, so that's really about it. So what we're doing today is we're going to spend the next couple hours, fingers crossed, that's all it'll take. I always seem to underestimate these projects, but our plan is to go ahead and expand this enclosure, which is what I want to show you next. So we'll be hammering these T-posts down, so we'll get that done. Lori just walked through the door area, so we'll be moving this panel down to the end of where the enclosure is going to be. And what we're doing for the enclosure, Lori wants to pan this way. So what we're doing with the enclosure, we already had additional hog paneling, because one of the things we found with our hogs is they really enjoyed running around, and we want that from them. We want them to get the exercise. It changes the way the meat is, the way the flavor is on the meat. Also keeps the hogs lean. But it's weird. It's even from the cuts that we've had so far, it has more marbling, but the animals themselves are leaner. So we want to give them a chance to do that. Plus, you know what? Pigs are pigs, man, and they love to run around, fight with each other, bounce off each other, bounce off of things, and we want to give them more space, which is exactly what we're doing. So our first task today is going to be to expand this enclosure. We're going to run from we're going to take it from 16 feet to 48 feet. So we're going to triple it, so it'll be 48 feet long and then the 16 feet deep. So we're going to expand it and include all this space. Had a few trees here that I'll link a video. You can see us relocating, but we relocated a few trees here, so we had this space open, and so that's what we're going to be working on today. So we're going to work on that. I'm not going to do a time lapse on this one. As far as the tools that we've used, I linked our original video at the beginning of this video, so you can see our simple pig enclosure video. It shows you what tools we use to do this process. We're using the exact same process today. So with Lori and I, the two of us working on this, is going to take us quite a bit longer to get that completed. So I'm not going to do a time lapse on that. So forgive me for that. But what we're doing, we're going to cut now. Lori and I are going to get to work. And when you come back, you'll actually see the expanded enclosure. So we'll come back to that next. Okay, so it's been about a week. We've actually spent a couple days this week getting a few things wrapped up. getting the pig pen enclosure expanded. So we want to share that with you now that we're done. So yeah, this last week we've had some cooler weather, so cooled down quite a bit. Got down into the low 30s, but we got a lot accomplished. So what I'm going to do is kind of walk you through a few of the changes that we did. So you had an idea of what our simple pig pen looked like, our basic pen, and now we've done the expansion. So a couple things we talked about in the beginning that we went ahead and completed. What you'll see as you look along the paneling, we can see on this side here next to Lori, this is where we've taken the T-posts and gone from about that 4-foot height to down to 3-foot height. As we were saying in the beginning of this video, a lot of the issues that we had when we were going through and doing some of the cleaning inside the pen, removing manure and things like that, we were challenged with hitting these T-posts. We were just cutting ourselves to shreds. So we put them back down so that they're about the same height as the pig paneling, just a little bit lower actually, so we're not going to nick and ding ourselves there. That also put that T that's at the bottom of the T-post down another 8 to 12 inches into the ground. One of the things we had, our water, our automatic waterer was right here. And of course, as it starts to drip, they really love playing in the water and in the mud and wallowing. They dug themselves a nice deep pit here where the water was, and it was getting down a little bit too far for my taste with the T-posts, because they were actually breaking those T's off, and really just kind of pulling them off. So we wanted to get those down deeper so it served both purposes. So we did that. If you look down here on the ground, you'll see kind of where the last two pigs were. So the end of the enclosure was about where we have that median point in the wall. Don't know exactly what's that called, but that thing that's sitting right there in the middle of the block fence that goes every 13 feet, that's about where the last one ended. So it's just on the other side of that, about halfway through that little hutch that we have for them. So we've expanded a little bit further down. We're going to walk you through that. So this is where the pigs were before. We've taken and we've expanded it. So we've got our waterer out here. So we've got our automatic waterer here. We use a 35-gallon trash can. I think it's 35-gallon trash can with a nipple drinker on the front. So we cleaned that out, got that set back up again, and then we've got the automatic feeder right next to that. As you're looking down, we're going to cover kind of more what we've done, but a lot more space for the pigs. So one of the things we did yesterday, today's Sunday, it's the last Sunday in February this year, in 2018. One of the things we did yesterday is we actually picked up our meat from butcher. So I think we got just under 400 pounds, I want to say, which does include lard. So I think we got 389 pounds. You can there, yeah. So about 389 pounds of pork that we picked up from our butcher yesterday. Brought that home, separated it out, took a couple pictures of that. We've got them up on our Instagram and Facebook pages. As far as what we got as far as meat production, very, very happy with what we got out of our first two pigs. And so, of course, yesterday what we decided to do was pick up two more. Because what's better than having bacon, but having more bacon. So that's what we're working on now. So yesterday we went back to our breeder. They had two pigs that are in the range that we wanted. They're both about 35 pounds. And if Lori wants to squeeze in, I'm not sure how well you could see them, but they're taking advantage of their little hutch area here. And not sure if you can see them back there or not, but this time we got a mixed breed. That's a Chester Yorkshire mix. That's the pink one. And then the white and black one would be a Hampshire. So we have those two that we're starting out now. So they get the benefit of their predecessors with a little more experience on their owner's part. And then, of course, they're going to have a lot more space. So we got those two coming. What we're going to do is we're going to walk down to the other end of the enclosure. So lots more space. You know, one of the things that we found when we had the two pigs in here, especially as they started getting bigger, is they get real rambunctious. They like to run. They really do run around a lot. They sleep a lot. They eat a lot. They poop a lot. But they also run around a lot. They like to kind of play and frolic around. We wanted a lot more space for them to be able to do that. It'll also change the consistency of the meat, which is really what we're counting on. So we want to have, you know, more of that pastured pork consistency in the meat, and we want to be able to give them more space to run around, root around, and be pigs, essentially. So another thing that we realized too pretty quickly when we got these last two, we had a real lack of shade in the area, which was a big problem. We got those pigs in September. I think it was September 25th, right around the end of September. Still very, very hot here in Phoenix in September. So we're up, 105, 110 degrees. learned very, very quickly that they sunburn easy and they really need shade. They were really, really scratching for shade. So we had tarps strewn up all over the place, and you know, they were hiding like next to the water, next to the feeder. They were trying to find as much shade as they could. So a couple things that we're going to have here in the spring. Number one, a couple of large mulberry trees, fruiting mulberry trees that are over here on my right-hand side, on Lori's left-hand side. So we got a couple trees that are getting nice and big. They're already about 15 to 20 feet tall, one of them. Another one's about 10 to 15 feet tall. They grow very, very rapidly, so they're going to give a lot of shade to the enclosure in the morning. What we've also done, if Lori wants to slide down at the other end of the enclosure here, we've added a very, very, very simple shade structure. So now if you've watched our first video, you know I do give a disclaimer that I am the last thing from a handyman that there probably is on the planet. And that's still true. I mean, I know a few things now after building some things, but for the most part, we're not all that good. And we like to keep things as simple as possible and as inexpensive as possible. So that's what we've done with the shade structure. So all we did for the shade structure, if Lori wants to slide in a little more, we're just using the end of the enclosure and the pig paneling on the end of the enclosure. We've taken just some basic standard galvanized fencing. So we've got a galvanized fencing here that we've strewn across these 3 T-posts on the outside. And then we've taken some shade cloth, some heavy shade cloth, and clipped some heavy shade cloth right over the top of it. You can see it's probably about 3.5 feet tall or so, slanted slightly that way, just in case we do get a little bit of water buildup when it does rain. And what we noticed yesterday when we brought the piggies in, is we brought the piggies in and they immediately went over into this corner, started rooting around, and they really liked being in the shade over here. And then of course as afternoon came, they came through the rest of the shade, and then they went back into their hutch and then spent the night in their hutch. So they've already started using the shade, but this will give them a nice big area of shade during the middle of the day, so they can get out of the sun if they don't want to go into that hutch. So that's pretty much about it. You can see it, get an idea of what we've done as far as taking that 16 by 16 pen and now turn it into a 48 by 16 pen with that same amount of 2 pigs. And even now, we're looking at the ability to expand. So with this much space, we could easily run 4 pigs in here, maybe more, and still have them have plenty of space to roll around, run around, wallow in the mud, and basically just be pigs. So really excited about this simple pig pen still, just expanded. So thank you for joining us today. I hope you had a chance to really get a good idea of what we've done with this area and this pig pen enclosure and its expansion. So we're glad you spent some time with us today. You know what, if you haven't done it yet, if you can like and subscribe, we'd really love it if you do. You know, we've spent a lot of time with on the farm with our fruit trees and what we're doing with fruit trees. It's something that I'm very, very familiar with. But you know, this is a lot of new, this is new, like kind of a new territory for Lori and I. So we'd really like it if you would join us on this journey. And you know what, if you've got comments or some ideas for us, if you could just click down below and leave us some comments and give us some advice. I'm willing to take advice. Probably could use a lot of it at this point, especially when it comes to things like pigs. But as always, just want to thank you for joining us today and remind you, if we can farm on the edge of nowhere, so can you. And that's the intro. In fact, somehow, probably because I'm just the klutz that I am, somehow I've got a scar in my shoulder. Actually, it's my chest. It's about right here. So I'm really not exactly sure how I did that. It went through my shirt, scarred up my shoulder pretty good because of this T-post. You know, you're shoveling pig poop, and when you're shoveling pig poop, you don't pay attention, I guess. I don't know. Either way, it was bad. So this last change that you just saw, that doesn't make any sense. Do that again.